Thank you, Dr. Malpani, for coming on today's episode of Mera Pehla Crore. And I am really honored. It's like meeting your heroes type of moment for me because I've been following you since 2019, I believe, when you used to write on LinkedIn. And you were one of the OG creators of LinkedIn when LinkedIn was not even creator first platform. So it's a very nervous moment for me to host you on my podcast today. But
You know,
I'm very glad.
yeah, but I should only say I'm glad to be here after it's over rather than before, right? Oh,
Yeah,
we'll
fair
see.
enough.
Okay, go ahead. No,
Yeah,
but come on, I'm going to enjoy this. Please go ahead.
yeah. But so basically, I just wanted to understand myself and help my listeners also understand who is Dr. Malpani behind his like aside from his profession and businesses of investments. So I would like if you could introduce yourself, like who is Dr. Malpani and where does he come from? That would be great.
Okay, so I would say 10 years ago, when I would go to a party, I would introduce myself as saying, I have the best job in the world. I get women pregnant and their husbands pay me to do that for them. And my wife stopped me from saying that anymore. She said, everyone's going to get
Fair
scared
enough.
to say something like that. But, at least that way people would remember that, hey, I make babies. I'm an IVF specialist. And I've been an IVF specialist for many years, one of the first few ones in India. And I'm still a practicing IVF doctor. And it's honestly a great profession simply because you change people's lives dramatically for the better. So that gives me a lot of joy. And I will continue doing that. I'm good at what I do. So that's one thing. But I think also at a particular point, people lead what is called a T-shaped model of life, which means you get a lot of expertise. But, honestly, after doing IVF for 35 years, every patient is different because their story is, but the medical procedure, I'm not saying technical advances don't occur, but the medical procedures remain the same. And then you need to reinvent yourself. You can't keep on doing the same thing, which you did a decade ago. So, what do you do?
Right.
So it's interesting. I became a doctor because my parents were doctors. And, I'm a little bit of a dinosaur now, but it was that time it was you either became a doctor or you became an engineer. Like that was good and bright. And my parents wanted me to be a doctor. I was quite happy to be a doctor. And I'm a good doctor. So that's not an issue. Then I took up angel investing because my daughter was doing it. So I said, half your life you do things your parents tell you to do, and the second half you don't kids make you do. No, but kidding apart, she used to work in, this was in England many years ago. She used to work for this fund of funds for social impact investing. It was a big deal. It was very new in those days. So it was called Big Society Capital. And that sounded interesting, partly because my parents were philanthropists and, would give a lot of money to charity, ran an orphanage, ran an organic farm, lots of stuff. But at least this was a more disciplined, a more systematic way of doing things. And so that's something which interested me. And, life has been kind. And investing is very interesting because in one sense, it's the last liberal discipline. You have to learn everything about everything. You have to learn how to judge people because entrepreneurs can be very charming and charismatic. It's quite easy to be taken for a ride. You have to understand what a business model is. You have to understand numbers. You have to understand the story behind numbers. And the beauty is, today it's fintech, tomorrow it's health tech, day after it's deep tech, who knows? And to that extent, we're pretty domain agnostic. So I measure my learning on investment. And it's easy enough to learn, but when you have skin in the game and you put money, your lessons are stickier, trust me. So therefore, yes, sir.
But so it's very interesting because you hear a lot of people going like very crazy about becoming doctors, but I don't hear a lot of buzz about becoming IVF doctors. So why did you choose IVF as a profession, like out of all the things that you could have done being a doctor as well?
And like I said before, IVF is a great mix of science, technology, and art. Counseling, you have to be compassionate because every patient's heart is breaking because they can't have a baby. Huge emotional stigma, huge social stigma. You got to spend a lot of time being compassionate and explaining to them that you understand what they're going through. A lot of technology in the sense the technology is dramatically improving. There are lots of things we do today we couldn't do even 10 years ago. So that's exciting and interesting. A little bit of science because obviously all medicine is based on science. So which drugs do you use for which patients, stuff like that. And art, to the extent, a lot of our time is spent on counseling patients. And a lot of patients don't understand a lot. Forget about IVF. They don't even understand enough about their human bodies and how babies are made. And I learned this the hard way. You would assume stuff and then they would ask you questions, say, what? You don't know what an egg is? And then I'd say, well, I know what an egg is, but it's not obvious that patients would know. Maybe you learned it in high school biology or whatever, but people forgot. So we actually created comic books.
Okay.
Educate patients.
Initial days.
Very early days, because two things. One is we wrote a book called How to Have a Baby, because people didn't know, and there were myths and misconceptions and lots of confusion and stuff. So that was India's first book on IVF. So it was basically patient education. And then we wrote the book, but we found no one would read the book. So we said, okay, we still need to get people informed. So therefore, we did a comic book, which is interesting because people are much more willing to read comic books.
Right.
The educational content of a comic book is actually better because it's a mix of both graphics as well as text, what's called dual mode learning. So it's sticky. There's a certain degree of novelty. So now even our husbands know what we're doing when we're doing IVF. We take pride in that. Like I said before, so it's a mix and match of all these stuff. And every time someone gets pregnant after IVF, their lives change dramatically. So you've changed the couple's life, which is, these are usually young couples, 30, 35. They've got another 35 years of their life left. So that's an additional 70 years. Plus you brought a baby up into this world. That's another 70 years. Wow. And these are deeply loved babies. So if you do, let's say, bypass surgery on, let's say, a 70-year-old man, maybe you increase his life expectancy by 5 years. When you do an IVF cycle, you're increasing quality of life for 70 plus 7, that's 140 years. So I think it's just, it's going to be life transformation. And so I always tell, people always say now they aren't babies, they're getting married and they're older and stuff. And I said, doctor, we always remember you. I said, yeah, maybe that's the reason I hiccup so much all the time.
Right.
It's a joy.
What you said about husbands understanding IVF better, I think I could personally relate with, not that I am a husband right now, but looking at my parents' journey. So I was born in 1997, right? And you opened your hospital, I think, around 1990s, like the early stage of IVF in India, at least. So my parents could not conceive for a very long time. So they gave IVF a shot. And the reason why it failed, what my mother has told me, is because one father wasn't very interested in the process. So that just like, I think it's Indian mindset at that point of time. At least it's evolving. It's with time. So I can completely relate to how that would have had an effect to the women's life, at least when their partner is not very.
And it's true even today. It's like having a baby is the woman's job. Making money is the man's job. And it's changing a little bit. And there's a lot more awareness. And we take pride in the fact that we made a lot of these changes. So we had the first website, for example. So a lot of the information is on our website. We have a YouTube channel. So lots of different things. Ultimately, you need to provide information in the format in which patients are willing to consume it.
Right.
And, if video works well, then you do it in a video format.
Right.
And it's interesting because it makes me much more compassionate, because then I'm forced to look at it from a patient's perspective. What is the patient thinking, or what is the patient feeling? So I think it's been a great journey. But one interesting thing is, being an IVF doctor actually helped me to be a better angel investor.
Okay. That's interesting.
Tell me why. You tell me why. I asked you first.
Did it make you more empathetic towards the founders, but also technically sound enough in your head to understand what needs to be done? You didn't flow with your emotions.
So I think actually it's a little more than that. So one is the compassion, in the sense that, basically lots of startups are going to fail. So founders are going to need a shoulder to cry on. And IVF cycles fail, and most IVF cycles fail, then patients need a shoulder to cry on. So you're able to do some of that. So you understand that, it's a journey. There will be good days, there'll be bad days. Some cycles will fail. Some startups will fail. Some will succeed, which is transformational. Some startups will succeed. So that perfect. And also because you're a doctor, it's a little harder for people to BS you. because, you're used to reading, learning, analyzing, thinking for yourself, unlearning, relearning. I don't get intimidated by a fat book. If you know what I'm saying. I may not understand something in the beginning. I may not understand what artificial intelligence is. I may not understand what an algorithm is. I'm also confident enough, I can figure it out.
Right.
If I can figure out medical school, then, I may not know about it, but I can figure stuff out. I think the other thing which is very helpful is, remember, every IVF doctor is also an entrepreneur to an extent. You run your own practice. And your own practice, in one sense, is a small business. You still have to worry about cash flow. You still have to worry about engaging with patients. You have to worry about putting patients first. So a lot of that stuff spills over.
Building a good team also.
Perfect. So I think there's lots of similarities between, and therefore, and also I think at least, is maybe a little more forgiving in the sense, people often get confused between angel investors and VCs. And I don't blame them, because all you see on Shark Tank is VC. The reality is VCs are spending other people's money. Whereas angel investors, you're spending your own money, which has pros and cons. The big advantage is it's your skin in the game, so you're much more careful, and to that extent, you're much more supportive. It also has its own sets of limitations, because the amount you can invest starts becoming limited. So I think it takes all parts. You need angels, you need bootstrapped entrepreneurs, you need VCs, PEs, everything else. But so I think to that extent, a lot of what we do in patient education in the IVF space, we also do for entrepreneurial education in startup space, because we think a lot of entrepreneurs don't have a clue. There's lots of information, but all of it comes from Silicon Valley, which is not relevant in India. And a lot of it is highly distorted, because everyone on LinkedIn seems to be an angel investor. Everyone seems to be an entrepreneur coach. Everyone seems to be all kinds of things. So they give a lot of gyan. But I said, if they don't put their money where their mouth is, really what uses it? And as an investor, you put your money where your mouth is. So again, that's just my opinion.
I completely I agree with your opinion, because I think that there's a lot of lack of awareness of knowledge in terms of entrepreneurship per se, because I started my entrepreneurial journey very early on, and everyone I approached to learn, because books can only teach you as much, and I probably did not have access to those particular books that were probably right for me. But I tried to reaching out to people back then in 2015, when the startup ecosystem was blowing up. And that was very early on. Not everyone even understood the concept of starting up or as widely. So I did not get the sense of understanding from these people who supposedly have made it in life. Even in their jobs. Just because you're doing a job does not make you discount you from knowing how a business runs. Right? You should know how a business technically runs. Otherwise, you are very disposable in your job also.
Perfect.
So that is what led me to start and fail 5 businesses on my own and learn from those. And then now I've come to a position that where I can be confident, say, if I have the right resources, the right idea, and the right team, I can probably make it. But at the end of the day, it's all based on chance, which people don't talk about.
I think a luck factor is, any honest person will tell you that there's so much luck involved. But the trouble is that a lot of the press releases you read about the startup media and stuff are often paid press releases by the VC investors, which means they're always going to spin a very positive story. No one tells you about the heartbreak and the sleepless nights and when things go. So it's very glossy and sugar-coated and stuff. And that's why it's very misleading. And so not only do we, write a lot of stuff on our website as to this is the process, this is how we think. It's not always right, but that's our opinion. But that's why we encourage our entrepreneurs also to build in public and share in public.
Yeah.
It's your journey. But, share it with other people. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake. You don't want other people to repeat the same mistake. What happened? Why did it happen? What can you do to fix it? And that's something which bothers me about the Indian startup ecosystem. See, the good thing about Silicon Valley is they're much more willing to share war stories, what worked, what didn't work. There's still, I think it's changing a little bit, but there's still that sense of hesitation. And honestly, I believe failure stories are far more educational than success stories.
100%.
You don't read enough of them. We don't read enough of them.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my point. So that's the crazy thing, that people are either embarrassed or they're gatekeeping knowledge. or they don't want to share numbers, and that is the reason why what stops them from sharing the story also. Because in India there is a taboo that if I tell people how much I earn, so they will like put evil eye on me or something like that. So I think that stops people from being
I'm
100% transparent.
I'm sure Ambani and Adani don't care about people putting evil eyes on them. Sorry.
I'm sure. But but having said that, like we spoke so much about your IVF journey, your doctoral journey, and your angel journey, and all of these things are very methodical like processes, and scientific also to some extent in your case. So I will ask you a very curious question. I would say, that do you believe in God?
I think that's a good question. And I think it's a good question because it depends on when you ask me that question. So, like the story is, there are no atheists in foxholes. So when you're on the firing line in battle, then obviously you believe in God. And then when you're very rational and everything is going well, you say, you know what, does that make sense? So I find that I'm not very religious, and, you know, I'm a little skeptical about a lot of rituals and stuff like that. But I think it's a comforting feeling to know perhaps that, you know, there's someone looking after you. And quite frankly, when I counsel patients, you know, a lot of them, why did the IVF cycle fail? And we don't have a very good scientific reason. I always tell them, you know, the ocean of medical ignorance is much vaster than the island of medical knowledge. So doctors know or pretend to know, or, you know, patients like to feel that doctors know. And there's lots of stuff we know, but there's much more stuff we don't know. So just like we can't predict which embryo will become a baby, we can't predict why an embryo doesn't. The irony is when it becomes a baby, you get a lot of pats on your back. No one asks, why did it become a baby? We don't know. And just like we don't know which will not become a baby. That's the reality. It's interesting that a lot of that applies to so many other things in life. So I think often as a counselor, when cycles have failed, when you're talking to couples, you need to be a little bit of a philosopher as well. And it's helpful, not so much for me, but for them. So if they're religious and they're spiritual, it's actually helpful for them to be able to cope with some of these ups and downs, because so many things are random. But if you have belief in a higher power, you also have that belief in, you know, I may not be able to make sense of this, and I don't know why God is doing this to me, but maybe He has a purpose, and it's not a divine decree, however you want to call it. And, you know, if you have that, then I think the journey just becomes a little bit easier. So,
but I'll tell you why I asked you this question particularly. I've never asked this question to any of my other guests, because you are literally into the creation of life business. And a lot of people give that reason to defy God. And I will tell you a very thoughtful anecdote, which I read surprisingly on LinkedIn only. Someone's shared a quote from some guru, I don't remember the name, that someone asked a guru that, oh, what is the proof of existence of God? So the guru replied that that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. And that has stuck with me. I read that like 6-7 years ago, and that has stuck with me to date. And I think that is why I'm asking you also that, what like, do you still feel there's scope for God not existing even after what you do?
So again, I don't think we play God, honestly. So I always tell people very clearly that when we do IVF, what we're doing is what is not happening in your bedroom for whatever reason. Either there's a problem with the egg, with the sperm, fallopian tubes are blocked. We're doing for 5 days in our test tube, and that's it. You know, we're making the embryo and then put it back in the uterus. I always tell them, if I were God, I'd give you as many babies as you wanted in your bedroom, and you would never need to come to me. So I think that's, again, a different kind. So like I said before, I can understand the logical basis of not believing in God. Let me put it that way. So I can understand the logical basis of being atheist. But I think some of these things, and I think it's a very artificial dichotomy. It's not often science versus religion. I think there's some things for which science has great explanations, and that's what you should use.
Agreed.
You should also accept the fact that there are some things we don't, and if you get emotional comfort, and that's fine. These are very personal beliefs, and they will evolve and change over time. You know, I think whatever works for you, you never need to do what anyone else does. But one way of looking at it is, there is so much in your life which is in your control, and there's so much which is not in your control. Then if you believe that the stuff which is not in your control means you're disempowered or you're helpless, then that's not a great position to be in. Whereas if you believe it's not in your control, but it's in God's control, then I think you get that sense of security that, okay, fine, maybe shit is happening today, but there will be a better
It'll be better tomorrow. Yeah.
hard. I don't know.
But thank you for answering that question and not taking offense in it, because it was a very personal question.
That's fine. I mean, that's the purpose of an interview. That's
Yeah, but I would also like to understand. I've heard this term thrown around, IVF as a concept. I don't know how it actually works, because I've not also paid a lot of attention of how it goes through. I just know that test tubes involved and the eggs and embryos and sperms involved. So, what is the actual process of IVF for a generic?
It's actually very, very simple. Doctors love using jargon and complicating things because, hey, we're so smart and we spent so many years in medical college and so many years, and patients are all idiots and they're never going to understand anything. And the more you complexify stuff, the more the money you can charge, and the more the reasons you can give patients. Oh, it failed because of this, that, and the other. And I hate that approach. So I basically, again, like I said, all we're doing in vitro fertilization, which is fertilization in glass or a test tube baby, is we're replacing the fallopian tube in the bedroom with the test tube in the lab. And that's it. So we're helping the woman to grow more eggs. Why? Because the more the eggs, the more the embryos, the better the chances. When the eggs are maturing, we're then getting them out in the test tube. We're fertilizing them in the test tube. All this would normally happen in the bedroom, in the fallopian tube. We're making an embryo, which would normally happen in the, and then we're putting it back in the uterus. And then again, so conceptually, it's not artificial reproductive technology. It's assisted reproductive technology. So when nature has let some of these couples down, we're helping them. We're giving them an assistance. So that effectively, अगर गाड़ी ऐसे नहीं चल रही है, तो तुम गाड़ी थोड़ी bypass कर रहे हो, but then ultimately it's still going back on track, which is the reason why the success rates are limited. Because at some point, you can be very, very good at what you do, but the downstream, after making the embryo, you have no control over a lot of that stuff. And that's why we spend so much time in educating people to have realistic expectations. And that's the reason we spend so much time in educating entrepreneurs. That you may be the brightest person in the world, you may be the hardest working, you may know everything, you may raise money and everything else, and sadly, the odds are still stacked against you. Because the future is uncertain, it is unpredictable. And the one thing you need to learn is a certain degree of humility, because it just helps you cope with that uncertainty a little bit better.
But I think that makes a lot of sense. But to add to that question, I've heard that freezing, like female eggs have certain lifetime in their, like, all of their life. And it's better to try to get pregnant at an earlier age rather than a later age, closer to your menopause. So, like, just out of curiosity, would it be a safe practice in general if female, like women, started freezing their eggs as a general practice around the age of 20? Because they don't want to get pregnant then, but they still might want to get pregnant later.
So I'm a very conservative doctor. In the sense, I don't like meddling around, which means nothing is risk-free. Everything has pros and cons. And there is no such thing as a minor medical procedure. Or every medical procedure is minor for a doctor. Every medical procedure is major for a patient. And there is involvement of a certain number of days of injections, a certain cost. It's expensive. So it's not like, theek hai, chalo, one day freeze karke rakh denge. There's a lot of thought which needs to be involved. So to your point, I think people need to make well-informed decisions for themselves. No, I don't tell my daughters what to do. I don't tell my patients what to do. I educate them so they can make the right decision for themselves so that they follow the path of least regret. And that's true even when you're talking to an entrepreneur. The reality is, before the funding, entrepreneurs are very charming and, until you sign a check. After you've given them the check, you have very little control on what an entrepreneur is going to do. And that's the reality. It's ultimately their business. You can show them a mirror. You can show them that they choose to take your advice. Great. They choose not to take your advice. Is honestly very little you can do about it. But it's exactly the same thing. So we would spend time in telling women, we would counsel them. We would say, this is the counsel of perfection. But the reality is not everyone has an unlimited amount of money. Not everyone. So let's flip this around. And I definitely not do it at such a young age. I mean, if you can get pregnant in your bedroom, you'd be stupid to come to me. Should stay away from doctors as far as possible. So I would say, if at all you wanted, you should learn enough about measuring ovarian reserve, which is a simple blood test, which you can do on every birthday after the age of 30. So at least you have some metric about, it's called an AMH level. So you have some metric on what your egg quality is. If your egg quality is fine, and again, all tests have limitations and stuff like that, but pretty much you can read and make a well-informed decision. It's not blind. And if everything seems to be fine, then you can say, okay, no, my awareness is, there's no reason for me to panic. And if, that fits within your this thing, then that's okay. Egg freezing is an insurance policy. It's an expensive insurance policy.
Okay.
And it's not 100% guarantee either. Because you freeze the eggs, then when she wants a baby, she needs to thaw the egg, we need to fertilize, we still need to make an embryo. So all there are downstream consequences.
Yeah.
My point is, it's great that the technology is available, because the good thing about technology is it increases your options. And it's great to be aware of your options. But whether to use that option for yourself or not is not something your mother or your mother-in-law or your boyfriend or your doctor should tell you. Definitely not. The point is, if you make that decision for yourself and you take ownership of your decision, you have peace of mind. कि ठीक है, सोच समझ के मैंने किया. Otherwise, ये सब डॉक्टर जोर है, सब पैसा बनाते हैं, सब फुकट का ये करते हैं, वो करते. So let me play this out to you. You have a 35-year-old woman. So, you're getting old, you should freeze your eggs. So, okay, doctor, आप बोलेंगे तो मैं eggs freeze करूंगी, which is obviously very profitable.
Right.
Freeze the eggs. And then she finds...
How much does it cost?
Quite a lot. It's about 2 lakhs. And plus, there's a recurring expense in the sense you need to freeze, you need to pay for the storage.
So like the rental.
Correct. So the meter ticks. And then suppose she finds Mr. Right in the age of 36 and she has sex and she has a baby in 37. And she'll say, yaar, fukat ke mere paise waste. It's not really a waste because you've created a... So the point is that if your attitude is, I want that peace of mind, I want to create that safety net, I want that insurance policy, but it's elective. Which means it's a decision which the patient needs to make for themselves. If they made it for themselves, it's a great choice. But I don't think anyone else should make it for them. That's my limited point.
Makes sense. Yeah, 100%. I think people should make their own choice. Like you're relating being a doctor to being an entrepreneur. I also am able to relate a lot of things to sales and marketing. I think as a function of sales and marketing, our job is to not to sell, but to make people aware and educate about the product or the service. And I always, as a salesman, I've done sales for like 3-4 years of my life. I always used to end the call on this note that I just want you to make a well-informed decision. I don't care if you go with me or some other service. You just inform me so that I don't waste my time on you, of course. But the end is on at the end of the day is yours. And I can only inform you. I will never tell you that take my service. I can only inform you that.
I think that's perfect. But there's a downside to this. And the downside is because the IVF clinics have become so corporatized. It's become an industry or a business which is designed to make money. There is now so much misleading advertising and mis-selling. Oh, you should freeze your eggs. And then some mother will read this and say, beta, tu to shakti nahi kar rahi hai, tu tere ande to freeze kar le. So honestly, it does happen. And that's not necessarily in everyone's. I'm just saying. So it's hard. People need to find the right balance. And I think the only way to find the right balance is by having data points and then making well-informed decisions. That's about it.
Right. And more like you touched upon the point of doctors scamming patients, or like some doctors scamming patients. So, is this actually true? Like some hospitals, big hospitals, I've heard some such stories. I have no verification on this. But I've heard such stories like from the likes of Medanta and Apollo and other big hospital chains that they have patients have felt that they have frauded them or scammed them and kept a dead body on ventilator for some time just to increase the bill, or just things like this of this nature. Do these things actually happen?
It's again, I think these are good points, and I think there's no smoke without fire. So I think some of them there is a grain of truth. Some of them also stories get distorted in telling. So it's getting hard to just accept that. So are all doctors lily white? Absolutely not. Does everyone know that kickbacks exist, commissions exist? Yes. Does everyone know that doctors in corporate hospitals have revenue targets, which means they'll often do unnecessary procedures? Yes.
Okay.
Is it easy to make patients do unnecessary procedures? Yes. It's very easy to scare a patient. So all that is unfortunately true. And therefore, right from the beginning, our whole point is that talking to doctors is pointless. Good doctors will remain ethical whether you don't need to tell them anything.
Yeah.
And bad doctors don't become ethical just because you give them a lecture. Incentives are not aligned. That's the reality.
Yeah.
Because the doctor ko bhi paid bharna hai. So tomorrow it gets kicked out of the corporate hospital because he hasn't done a sufficient number of CT scans. Why should he do this thing. So I think a lot of the system, the corporatization, the predatory capitalism, a lot of this has unfortunately become very perverse. And therefore, our approach is you have to invest in what we call information therapy. And knowledge is power. And if a patient is well informed, see, let's be honest. The patient only wants one thing, finding a trustworthy doctor.
Yeah.
The patient's not going to do IVF in their bedroom. You still have to go to a doctor. How do you trust a doctor? And that's very hard because all doctors say the same thing and all the websites say the same and everyone claims the best success rates. That's part of the problem. And therefore, you need to learn to be able to dig deeper and to ask difficult or important questions to be able to judge. And I think, therefore, that's what we're trying to do. How do we help patients to find the right doctor for themselves? Now, for patient A, Dr. X may be right. For patient B, Dr. X may be a terrible, who knows?
Yeah.
To take ownership of that decision, I think it's just a lot. But
I completely respect
same with entrepreneurs and investors.
Yeah.
But I may be a terrible investor for some people. But if your chemistry is right, you're on the same page, you have the same philosophy, this makes everyone's journey much easier.
Right. But I just brought up another slightly hard question, in terms of controversial nature of the question. But do you think that health insurance is encouraging doctors and hospitals to write more procedures and surgeries? So because they know that the patient is also, so they're ethically free in their mind also. Patient को पैसे नहीं देने, insurance वाले देंगे, इसका क्या जा रहा है? हमारे पैसे और
so that's not ethical at all. Trust me. Just because someone else is paying.
Pseudo-ethics. Yeah.
Let's not whitewash stuff. It's definitely unethical. No two ways about it. And I think irrespective of who's footing the bill, you need to be answerable to your conscience. So I don't think, and you're absolutely right. There's actually a name for this procedure. It's called a wallet biopsy, which means often you're asked insurance hai ki nahi, and based on kitna insurance hai, then we'll decide all the rest of the stuff, which I think is, but I think it's also inevitable. Everyone's ending up. So the insurers are now no longer trusting the doctors no longer trust the insurers, and it's the poor patient who gets squeezed in the middle. It's very sad.
And I think a similar thing is happening in the automobile industry. The cars that used to cost 3 to 4 lakhs are now costing 10 to 12 lakhs for no reason at all. Just because they know that all the customers are going for EMIs. So other those are EMI, there are 2 things So they're playing by that rule, and that's my own judgment. I'm not saying
it's actually, I think even with cars it's okay, but just think about what BYJU's did, and that's the reason it really. These are, at least okay. Someone who's buying a car presumably is financially well off, has reached a certain stage. BYJU was selling stuff to people who was working as liftmen, who wanted their kids to have a better life and who couldn't really afford it. So you got them to buy these stupid tablets with a few videos on them. And it was expensive. And you know how people are. Oh, it's expensive. It must be good. And never mind, you can't afford it. We'll organize the EMI for you. And they get just trapped in educational debt. So I think, I think, again, even the word credit card itself is so misleading. Where's the credit? You're trapping yourself in debt. But
yeah, exactly. And the actual money that you own is called debit card. So it's like the wordplay, and people don't understand this.
No, but it's all deliberate.
Semantics.
No, but it's cleverly designed by the guy who wants to see that credit card and sell you that debit. Yeah, I think it's sad. Yeah, I don't think the world is going to change. It is what.
Yeah,
it is.
Me neither. Yeah, I completely agree, and I just because you touched upon that subject of BYJU's fraud, and now we all have the reality in front of our eyes. I think you were one of the few people in 2020 and 2021 when BYJU's was literally at its peak with the COVID lockdown setting and people learning from home. And you were the only one of the few people who was criticizing BYJU's left, right, and center. And I think that also got you banned from LinkedIn permanently. So
I treat that as a badge of honor.
Exactly. I would actually that's why I'm not saying it as a lowly comment. It's a badge of honor. You should take that, because if a $25 billion company, or even if LinkedIn came after you, LinkedIn in itself is also a big company. Coming out for a single person with some opinions, just some words and thoughts, and people are resonating with it. I think that's something that you are doing wrong. if the words can be used.
So I don't think LinkedIn covered themselves with glory as a result of kicking me out. But I mean, they did what was in their financial best interest. Let's not forget they're also a corporate. They were earning a lot of money from BYJU's ads. BYJU was one of the big bankrollers. And then if someone from BYJU's picks up a phone and says a call and say, hey, this guy is just a mess. And because it's a private platform, they said, fine, we're going to kick this out because he doesn't conform to community guidelines. But I'm not sleeping over it. We've sued them in Mumbai High Court. We're saying you can't bully Indian citizens.
So is that case over?
No. This is the Indian judiciary. It takes its own sweet time. But it's still too early to say. Effectively what happened is we appealed that decision. And give me reasons of why you're kicking me out. Fine, Baba, we understand. Tell me what I've done wrong. Whatever. So we've decided, you've done something wrong. I said, okay, fine. I don't agree. Who do I complain to? So if you're not happy with our decision, sue us in the US. We're a US company.
Okay.
He said, that's ridiculous. I'm Indian. I am in India. You earn money from Indian listings.
They have GST.
You're answerable to the Indian judiciary. Why the hell should I go to the US? Therefore, we had to file a writ petition in Mumbai High Court saying that the LinkedIn should be answerable to the Indian government. Why should Indian citizens have to go? But, they're a big corporate. They hire big lawyers. These big lawyers are smart about getting dates and stuff. That's okay. It'll take its time. But I needed to establish a point. Just stop bullying people. You might be a $2 million platform, but still people have a voice. And the reason you exist as a platform is because of user-generated content, and you can't pick and choose. And you definitely should not be bullying Indian citizens. So we'll see.
But just because we're on the subject of LinkedIn, why did you start creating content on LinkedIn initially? Because nobody else was doing it at that point of time. Very few people like Sandeep Kochhar, you, and probably some other people who had a lot of knowledge. It was not like LinkedIn, either it was like new job posts or like very information posts such as yourself. So what moved you to write?
So again, I write a lot. LinkedIn is just one platform. Now I do because I do a lot of writing on Twitter. Before that, I did a lot of writing on the website. I've been having a blog now for over 20 years. So I'm happy to explore any platform. We have an active YouTube channel. My limited point is that there are two ways of doing things. One is you create your website where you have 100% ownership. But getting people to come to your website is exceptionally hard, especially has become increasingly harder day by day. Or you piggyback onto someone else's platform, whatever works. And, with some of these things you start, you don't expect anything to happen. And it's only over time that it evolves and it does happen. So, I have an opinion, but how do I share my opinion? I can share my opinion with 5 friends in a room. Limited impact. Of course, when you share your opinion in public, you get a lot of hate and trolls and flack. And my friends say you're an idiot and, why you criticize everyone left, right, and center. And I said, I have an opinion. I care about this country. I care about the next generation. And if people like me don't voice their opinion, the reality is lots of people have the same opinion, but they don't share it in public. And the difference is I share it in public.
I completely agree.
What's the point of being rich and old if you have to live your life in fear?
I want to be that rich someday where I don't fear of judgment.
So it's a trade-off. You can either say, I want to be richer, in which case then you have to keep the powers that be happy and placate them and Moscow them and, all that good stuff. Or you have to say what you do. Let me tell you, I will pay the price. At some point, someone's going to go after me. I can't predict who that's going to be. And there are consequences to a lot of this stuff. Losing 150,000 followers on LinkedIn is not great. But there's a price you pay. But at the end of the day, you also have to say, okay, fine, this happened. Did I do everything as far as I'm concerned, which is right? So, you have to march by the drummer of your beat rather than someone else's. So you can't keep on worrying about what the rest of the world is going to say and think and stuff like that. And, I say what I think is right. It's just my personal opinion. It's not always right.
Exactly.
And some people agree. Great. Some people don't. That's great.
I completely agree with that because I'm quite similar in that matter because I also try to speak my heart and mind because there's no point of in being a hypocrite. I would rather lose someone than keep them around with me. So it's better to not have those people around who don't see eye to eye with you. It's better to have those people around who agree to disagree with you and still can tolerate your face.
Yeah, but that's especially in places like Twitter, that's hard. Because a lot of these then become very acrimonious and you're an idiot. No, you're a bigger idiot. You're the biggest idiot, that kind of stuff. So again, it's okay. I mean, then, they can
Name
either
calling
take
comes
it,
in.
yeah, I can take it, leave it, whatever. So, okay. As long as I
I think
enjoy it, I'll do it. When I stop
exactly,
enjoying it, I'll stop doing it. I'm not selling anything.
exactly,
I don't care.
exactly. It's not like you're selling courses on how to be a doctor. So, but having said that, like a lot of people saw BYJU's doing a lot of wrong things. But why? What moved you? What particular situation moved you to go after them like so brutally? Like did something happen around you to someone that you knew?
I think that's interesting. No, actually not.
Okay.
Again, a lot of what none of what I do is actually personal, if you know what I'm saying. A lot of it
Okay.
is big picture. And again, I don't like the way people exploit gig workers. I don't like the way politicians exploit us. I don't like the way that our tax money is used for shoddy infrastructure. And,
Yeah.
at some point, I have limited outlets in which to express some of my outrage or
Yeah.
whatever else. And therefore, I'm quite happy to use, no, so there's nothing personal. But I care about kids and I care about education because I think they're a future. And very
Yeah.
honestly, we've messed up. I mean, 75 years of independence or whatever, and what have you done? Very little which you can be proud of. A lot of it has happened in spite of government or in spite of
Yeah.
politicians. So we could do a better job. And so a lot of people ask me, what makes you qualified to run Apni Pathshala? And, why do you give all this gyan about homeschooling and non-schooling and micro-schooling uh, and especially when we went after BYJU's, a lot of people said, you must be jealous, you must be envious. He's $1 billion unicorn, you're just an idiot. You failed
Yeah.
to invest in him, and that's all kinds of. Anyways, that happens all the time. I think whenever you get those ad hominem attacks, that's a good sign. Because obviously you're
Yeah.
getting under people's skin enough that they're getting bothered by what you have to say. But anyway, so the reason I care is because, see, at some point, it's very hard to change people just stop thinking for themselves. So by the time you're, let's say, 25 or whatever else, your attitudes are fossilized, they become rigid. You think you know everything. And that's fine. But I think when you catch them young, and what are we trying to do? We're helping them. I'm not saying do this or do that or anything else. I'm saying just learn to think for yourself. And that's one thing the schooling system does not encourage. It
Yeah.
encourages cramming for exams, conformity, listen to the teacher, don't ask questions, don't interrupt, just whatever the book says is right, whatever the teacher says is right. That's not the great way to bring up intelligent citizens or
Yeah.
create a healthy democracy. And therefore,
Yeah.
we could do a root cause analysis. Even, for
Yeah.
example, we see lots of IVF patients who've been cheated by doctors. Then you ask yourself, अरे तेरा तो MB है. Why did you allow this doctor to cheat you? लेकिन जो डॉक्टर ने बोला मैंने किया. I said, ठीक है डॉक्टर ने बोला लेकिन डॉक्टर के दो brains थोड़े ही होते हैं. You're also educated. You can
Yeah.
also get out, go to the Mayo Clinic website. Is what the doctor's saying right? If it's wrong, then, why didn't you
Yeah.
speak? Anyway, so it's the same thing. So therefore, unless you encourage kids to take a questioning critical, and
Yeah.
the good thing is a lot of that stuff's now very easily available. It's all online, it's all free. We think our goal is to make sure every Indian kid has access to a PC. We're not keen about mobiles at all because I think mobiles are terrible pedagogical tools. With a small screen, it's really unfair.
Yeah.
We don't think tablets are great. I don't want my daughter to learn, my daughter is grown up, but I won't want my grandkid to learn on a tablet because it's great for watching videos, but it's not
Yeah.
very great for interacting. Then if you want to do anything more, you need a PC.
Yeah.
So at
You
my
need something to write on.
yeah, you need a keyboard. So, I mean, you can give second-hand stuff, but the only reason you're giving that other stuff is because they can't afford it. I think that's ridiculous. Then why don't you make it affordable? And there are
Yeah.
multiple ways of doing that. So that's basically what make it affordable, offer payment options, different things. And then once you have that PC, that kid will learn for themselves. That's our hypothesis. We think, what do kids require to learn? They require a safe learning space, which means there shouldn't be any bullying teachers. There shouldn't be any coercion. Attendance is optional. You're having fun. You learn more. That's what I mean by a safe learning space. They need the company of friends because you learn very
Yeah.
little from your teachers. You learn more from your friends. And this
Yeah.
is different ages and stuff, everyone this thing. And you require teachers, but you don't necessarily require human teachers who are in the room with you. There you require mentoring and supervision and coaching and guiding. Nee, beta, figure it out. Nee, hua to,
Yeah.
okay, why don't you check this? But the best teachers are online anyway. So then kids need access to those teachers through a PC. And
I totally think that if Geo did anything right in India, it was the pre-internet revolution that they brought in 2016 around demonetization. You think we can call it whatever we call it, tax evasion scam or whatever it was, but it changed India for better. Like it put like us 10 to 20 years ahead of our growth that could have been there otherwise. And like also,
yeah, I know exactly. I always tell people, a lot of people ask me, did you homeschool your kids? Why are you telling us? I say the life times are very different. When my kids were younger, that time all the knowledge was locked up in libraries or books or journals and stuff like that. And if things have changed, but you've not changed, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Why should you continue learning the same way just because you were taught as a kid that particular way? It's completely a broken system.
Exactly. People stop questioning, like you were saying that, and like just adding to your point, I think 20 years ago, knowledge was centralized. And now it's decentralized. Everyone has it in their hand, like in their hands, in front of them, around them, if not with them. And it is very easily accessible. So you don't need to go to the certain central zone to gain knowledge. You can go there for something additional to knowledge, and knowledge gaining can happen at home, and the skill building and socialization can happen in the central location, because that is what we're not taught.
So here's and therefore again, and when I criticize BYJU's, a lot of people say, yeah, you give all these lectures about how bad BYJU's is. What's the alternative? Or why are you blaming BYJU's? Everyone's doing coaching classes, tuition classes, our schooling system is broken. What's the better alternative? Which is why I had to do a lot of homework and reading about how kids learn, how coaching classes actually dumb students down, why exams are a very poor metric. On that day, you could have a stomachache and you could do badly. It's so random. Whether you'll come first.
Even if you don't, my problem with exams in general is that they're judging you on your memory. They're not judging you on your skill. I failed my 12th class board exams, and I'm a high school dropout, by the way. And I failed my 12th class maths exam. And I did not care to give the retest because it's so exhausting. I need to move on with my life. I'm just stuck in the loop of exams. I'm like, if I have to make my life, and I'm a big believer in God, I don't think that जो मेरा receive होगा मुझे नहीं मिलेगा just because of some stupid piece of paper. So like I sound arrogant, but I'm not. I'm just like independent of thought.
But in fact, I think that's a great way of being. And I think the reality is that more and more people worldwide are actually realizing this, that a diploma or a degree now, because there's so much degree inflation, there's so much credential inflation, they've become so expensive. So in the old days, a BA was looked upon. Now BA to the MA चाहिए, MA नहीं हुआ तो PhD चाहिए.
Exactly.
PhD होने के बाद भी you'll become a municipal sweeper because there are no other jobs available for you.
Point.
No, I mean, not just no point. It's actually, so forget about the cost. It's an opportunity cost. 50
Exactly. People don't take that into factor.
That's what
but people don't opportunity cost into the factor. Like that's what I thought to myself. अगर मैं अभी भी जाके पीछे जाके मैं एग्जाम क्लियर कर लूं, क्या होगा? 3 साल मुझे और पढ़ाई करनी पड़ेगी कॉलेज जाके, और मैं कमा नहीं पाऊंगा. And I really needed to earn at that point of time in my life. अगर मैं एक पॉकेट में वो करके अपना वो काम करूंगा, मैं I will earn from day zero. I'll figure it out. मैं 12 center पे काम करूंगा, but I'll do something.
I think in a way, I have a lot more respect for people who have taught themselves, because self-directed learners have proven that they're capable of thinking, they're capable of doing stuff for themselves. They're not very good corporate employees often, because often a boss wants someone who will behave like a kid in a classroom. Speak up only when I speak to you. Don't ask questions. Don't rock the boat. ये homework है, ये करो. ये office का काम है, ये करो. दिमाग मत इस्तेमाल करो. Don't tell me anything else. And that's what schools have been designed to do. They actually dumb down an entire generation, and tuitions are just making a bad problem even worse. So our concept is actually what we call community micro schools. Small, because ultimately your class size shouldn't be more than 20, because at about the number of 20, 25, everyone knows everyone else. The moment it is more than that, then it starts becoming impersonal. Where everyone is, so the word for that is not decentralized. It's called a distributed network.
Yeah.
The difference between a distributed network is every network then feeds in information to, so one community micro school learns from another, 50 different things start happening. And that's the beauty about the internet, that every node is as important as every other. So just so many things. And I think in India, our strength is the number of young.
Yeah,
What breaks my heart is we're frittering our human capital away. There is so much
exactly.
jobless growth. There are so many people who are agitated, dissatisfied. You look at some of these things. For one job, there'll be 1,000 applicants. Then, there's stampedes and stuff. Unless you teach people to fend for themselves.
But what baffles me the most is that if the unemployment rate is going high, so is the demand for like hiring posts and everything. Like companies are looking to hire. There's not just skilled uh, human resources out there. So that is what I learned from recently. I watched a show called House MD, which is a very old show based on doctors. And in every episode, he's doing like differential diagnosis of each patient. Right? It's not standardized diagnosis. It's differential diagnosis. So you should be capable of looking at your own life and looking at what you need to do right for your own life. If you need money, go chase that. Forget about the education. You can get educated at any given point of time in your life. If you can earn money today, you can get educated tomorrow. You can get educated along the way. You don't need to get educated from day zero and then start earning. That's a hoax. That is a strategy that people are using to keep people in debt.
I completely agree. I think, but the problem is students are not decision makers. Students are dependent on parents.
Exactly.
Parents are very risk averse. Parents don't understand enough. And for a lot of parents, the rich ones, the school is a status symbol. They don't even care whether kids get an education or not. You want to hang out with Ambani's kids and stuff like that, because then when you grow up, that's part of your network and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, like I said before, it's a broken system. I always tell people you could actually give your kid the same quality of education which Elon Musk's kids have, because all that stuff is available. You subscribe to brilliant.org, you do Udemy courses, you subscribe to synesthesia schools, all that stuff. And then when kids learn with each other, they learn to learn for themselves. How long are you going to be babysitting your kid? At some point, your kid's going to become an adult. But it's
You need
actually...
to learn from nature.
Sure.
The Lions Club gets left on their own, like at the age of 2 or 3, maybe, and then they have to live their life on their own. They make mistakes, they get beaten up, but they, at the end of the day, being a lion is still a lion. A beaten up lion is also a lion.
But you know what? Why are we going to lions? Even if you think about, let's say, 200 years ago, what did happen? Where did people forget about even today in tribes which don't have schools in Africa? People learn to fend for themselves. So I mean, the schooling is a very artificial construct which happened for all the wrong reasons. The industrialization, the move, capitalists needed labor to work for them. Macaulay wanted clerks to run the Indian Empire, the British Empire, all that stuff. So I think people, but see, unless you have that historical sense, the whole thing is default is, padhai karni hai to school jana hai. No one asks why, no one asks what the alternative is.
So, people don't let you ask why. And then it's not like, my sadness with the education system is that I was not judged on creativity at all in my latest stage of the education, whatever I've done. I was not just, people don't even know how creative I can be, how smart I can be, how street smart I can be, how technically and statistically sound my mind would be, but they're just judging me on my marks, which I'm getting less because I got bored. So that's probably it. But I don't want to say, like, I think I went off topic. I won't take much of your time. I just want to cover a few things. I really want to talk about with you as well around the angel investing segment of your Malpani Ventures. That you focus a lot on Frugal innovation, and it's again, I won't shy away from saying that this is the first time I ever heard this word in my life. It was from you. It's like frugality and frugaling, because your big focus was on that and these kind of entrepreneurs. So, why do you focus on frugal innovation rather than burning cash in startups or like people usually?
Partly because I don't have cash to burn. It's all hard-earned money. I'm not a VC. VC to दूसरे लोग का पैसा उठाते हैं. As a general partner, तुम limited partner का पैसा लेते हो. You make your money on your carry and your management fees. So you really don't care beyond a particular point. I can't afford to take that approach. But I think, forget about all that. I think it's just that I think frugal entrepreneurs use money much more sensibly. They're much more, I would say, respectful of the money. They care a lot more about how it's utilized. They care a lot more about the end user. Because when you're burning the investor money, then your first job is to delight the investor. Customer Whereas when it's, you know that your investor is going to give you so much and no more, you better use that money to delighting your customers. Lots of good effects. I think gives you a huge competitive edge. It makes you sustainable. It's much easier to scale. The only downside is you need to be a lot more patient. And
Right.
downside in the sense, if you want to become this thing, then that's different. And obviously, it's not the right game. But if you're willing to be patient and play the long game, it makes much more
Yeah.
sense.
Can you share a success story with like which got you a lot of good returns with your
Financially, nothing.
your investments? You haven't exited.
Of course we have, but I think that's a vanity metric. And I don't even measure I tell you one thing. The only money you should invest in a startup as an angel investor is money you can afford to lose without losing sleep over. Never ever put money in a startup where because the reality is no matter how good the entrepreneur, whatever he does, his fate is not in his control. It's a complex adaptive system which is fragile. And then if you have too much this thing, then he'll just make your life miserable and his life miserable. So not very sensible. It's much this thing. So I think I'm fairly detached. And I would not measure success in my angel investing space based on how much money I made. I mean, I'm not saying we don't track it. That's part of the Malpani Ventures team. What is the IRR? What is the money? It keeps me disciplined and stuff like that. But I told you, I'm measuring joy on investment. You get to hang out with young entrepreneurs who are very bright, who know a lot of stuff, who are out to change the world, and learning on investment. Because then you're forced to learn about crypto. You're forced to learn about, everything and anything. Because entrepreneurs will take you for a ride. And then they all use these buzzwords. So does he understand what he's saying, or is he treating you like
hassle-free solutions?
I mean, that's still more benign than anything else. Everything is AI powered these days.
Yeah.
I don't like being treated like an idiot. But anyway, whatever. So it's okay. That's fine. So you get to learn a lot.
But like from what you were saying, what is the average ticket size that you invest in? Like
So when we started,
20 startups.
When we started, it was smaller. Now it's a lot bigger. Like I said, God has been kind. Public markets have grown. So a lot of people ask me, how come you as a doctor invest money? Because very few doctors are angel investors.
Yeah.
I need to tell people this. I would never invest professional income in startups because professional income, what I earn by seeing patients, doctors are daily wage earners. This is literally blood, sweat, and tears. And that's hard-earned money. Now, like I said, God has been kind. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala was a very good friend. My dad believed in the equity markets. So the equity market investment has done very, very well over the last 20 years. As a result of which, the money I put in startups is usually surplus money which comes from the public market. Now, you don't get, it's nice to make money, but you don't get any joy when Hindustan Lever increases because, what is it? But when your own startup, whom you're coaching and guiding and mentoring, that joy is a lot more. So I know it's ideally money is fungible. You shouldn't put it in buckets. All this mental accounting is not very logical, but that's what you tend to do. So it's like, okay, fine, this is money made in the public markets. And therefore, I'm happy to put this money in the private markets because I think I can make a difference. That's just what's worked well for me. I'm more than happy to put it. But prices have increased. Now they've become 3 crores, 4 crores. But we have a system. So it's not random. So we're fairly a lot of due diligence. We are all very transparent on our website. This is what we expect. This is our sweet spot. These are the kind of investors we are. This is the kind of entrepreneur we're the right investors for. This is the kind of entrepreneur we're the wrong investors for. That has to be.
And I'm glad that you touched upon that point. That what do you think? What do you look for in an entrepreneur in general? Like, what are some good traits to have as an entrepreneur or phone as kids?
It's very hard to judge people. It's the hardest thing in the world. And, I told you before, you do all your due diligence, how much, everyone's on their best behavior. You triangulate, look for anti-reference checks, which is not the reference check which he gives you. It's the anti-reference check is which boss fired him and stuff like that. But no matter what you do, it's very hard. A lot of people say, I can look someone in the eye and say, ye banda acha hai, is a good guy. I can't do that. Honestly. So I don't even pretend that I can do that. So there are two things. I'm a big believer in numbers and in written stuff. Therefore, I prefer people pitch to me in writing. If you can't write well, means you can't think well. If you can't think well, I don't want to give you money. So we expect a certain amount of discipline and stuff like that in how you're doing it. we prefer bootstrapped entrepreneurs. We prefer people who spend their own money, who understand the value of money. But like I said, all this stuff is on our website. But the good thing about spending your own money is you can always break your own rules.
Yeah.
My team doesn't like it when I do, and I often break them fall stupidly. But you know what? I mean, sometimes you fall in love with an entrepreneur and then you end up the wrong person to have fallen in love with. It does happen. I guess over time, I'll become a little smarter. We'll see.
I completely relate to that on a personal level, not on an investing level. But I do feel that people are unpredictable and good people are hard to find. And when I tend to find them, I try to keep them as close as I can, because these are the people who come out to help you regardless of their personal interests. And that is the kind of person I am. So I basically look for myself in other people, whoever is closest to me. And but if we can't talk about the traits of a good entrepreneur, we can at least talk about some common hurdles that you have seen with startups, because I'm sure there are some common hurdles that most startups face in general that you've invested in. कि ये तो होना ही है. So now you have a probably template check कि भाई ये check करके चलना है, ये आता ही है मुझे.
You know, the trouble with the template is partly because everyone makes the same mistakes. And the commonest mistake is they run out of cash. And then when you tell them that, they're not very interested in listening to you, because it's like, all you care about is money. Tu to bani hai, tu cash flow dekhta hai, you're a bean counter. I said, boss, अगर तेरा पैसा नहीं आने वाला, खत्म हो जाने वाला है, तो कंपनी कहाँ से चलाने वाला है? So, you know, but again, I think people, so I love failed entrepreneurs because they made mistakes on their own. And they're much more receptive to when you tell them, because they know that, you know, you'll get a second chance and a third chance, but you won't get a 20th chance. Then they're much more invested in succeeding. So
I completely agree with that.
Failed, frugal, bootstrapped entrepreneur who cares about social impact and delighting customers. That's this thing. But having said that, you know, so I don't have to worry about following a thesis. And tomorrow some fintech guy comes and says, hey, this is what I'm doing. I say, wow, this guy's smart, you know. And I'll still give them. I'm not allergic to making money.
Yeah, I completely understand that. What is the coolest startup that you invested in that you were very happy about?
So again, like I said before, I have a soft corner for education. Like I said, a lot of not necessarily that the startups will do well from a financial perspective, but those are the ones because I think, you know, they're doing valuable stuff. They're doing good stuff. And there will be others which will make me money. But I think, so again, health tech is something I have a soft corner for because I happen to be a doctor. But those are just my personal biases. Everyone should have their own personal biases. That's the good thing about being an angel investor, is that you can do what you think is right. And as long as your wife doesn't divorce you, you're okay.
That is very candid of you, but I understand. I agree with that. I feel risks should be taken. You should not be risk averse, but you should also not take uncalculated risks. And
so that's so true. And that's the reason why we have a process. And the trouble is, like I said, I'm not very smart with a lot of that stuff. And that's why we have a team which keeps me grounded. So we always have someone who plays devil's advocate, who are much more disciplined, look at the numbers, say, Dr. Malpani, don't be an idiot. Don't give this guy the money. And then sometimes I still get the money and then they turn around after, see, I told you, you were an idiot. And I said, okay, I was an idiot. Next time I'll be less of an idiot. But you know, you can't.
That's opportunity.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what I keep telling myself also, because I have failed in ways you can't even imagine of a 20 person less than 20 years old failing. I went bankrupt. I lost all of my inheritance. I've done all kinds of odd things that you can possibly think of. But the way I learned from it was that not many people can fool me today. So if I'm getting fooled, that means I knew that I would be fooled beforehand. And I was just taking a chance on that person. They just proved me wrong. That's it. So
I love what you're saying. You're extremely mature. I must say that. I think in the very fact that you've bounced back from your failures gives you confidence in yourself that I can be
exactly.
What's the worst thing which will happen? I'll get bankrupt again. But you know what?
Exactly.
I've been there, done that, and I've proven that I can get out of it. And the next time, I'll be able to do it much faster.
Exactly. And I'm very religious myself, or at least I like to believe. So I truly think that the problem guzar jayegi, मैं गुजर जाऊंगा, दोनों तरीके से problem खत्म हो जाती है. बड़े डंडे की जरूरत नहीं. What is the worst that could happen? I will just get embarrassed publicly. That is it. And public embarrassment just fades away if you have a thicker skin. And I have very thick skin. So that just helps me. And So, but one last question would be for you: that what excites you most about the future of entrepreneurship in India? Because you have been part of this space for quite a while now, at least half a decade, if not more, in my
Yeah,
eyes.
longer than that. I started
Exactly.
investing during the dot-com boom. Everyone invested.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, I'm an old man now. Yeah, yeah. Lost a lot of money, but anyway, that's a different story. So
Then you invest in like Shadi.com or Naukri.com, where
I
these not
wish,
on.
I wish.
Okay.
And like I said before, I don't have any FOMO.
So,
I don't have to prove anything to anyone. This is just additional stuff. So that's all okay. So in fact, in one sense, I won't say I'm an anti-VC, but I would call myself VC prime, which means a lot of startups which wouldn't make any sense for a VC are perfect for me. Let me put it that way. And to your point, where do I see the startup space? I think we need more made in India for India solutions. And I think a lot of the made in India solutions are just copycat clones of, what's
yeah.
fuzzy and stuff, because that's where the publicity is, that's where the Shark Tanks are, that's where the
Yeah.
VCs are, that's where the headline news is. So often the people who are actually on the ground grinding away, doing the hard, boring stuff day after day, they don't get enough attention.
Yeah.
It's a shame. Hopefully, if we have enough of those stories, I think things will change. You can't hurry any of this stuff. Silicon Valley is at least 20 years ahead of us. And now they've reached a certain degree of maturity. And again, it's a very different ecosystem. Money is much cheaper. There's a lot more money. A lot of that stuff's just not going to work in India. But I'm the optimist.
Yeah, just adding to your point, that my personal goal with this particular podcast is that I'm building it for the next decade. And so my goal eventually is that I don't like how Shark Tank is operated. And I don't like that people are publicly humiliated. I am more I like working with humility and humbleness. And I want to create another spectrum of Shark Tank, something like Dolphin Tank, because dolphins are like friends of human beings. So I want to create a similar platform that works as like in concept, it works similar to Shark Tank, but with much more friendliness, with much more helpful input.
But the trouble is that's not as sexy, no? So ultimately, trouble is you're not giving people, it's hard. I'm telling you upfront, you're not giving people what they want. So if you
don't getting money out of it, I think it could be.
But you don't give people the masala. Anyway, like I said, best of luck. Everyone needs to try. At the end of the day, the most important is to sleep well. That, hey, fine, I'm happy about what I'm doing. That's much more important. So I like the fact that you're grounded. I like the fact that you're very clear about what you want to do. I like the fact that you're not doing what everyone else is doing. Hey, this is what this thing is. And everyone needs to be happy for themselves. I think the secret is you need to find work which excites you, which you think is personally amazing.
Exactly.
That's everyone's definition.
And I think that's where anyone thrives. Like if someone told you to be a doctor, like standing on top of your head and like you had no other choice. Like I said very initially in this podcast that you had two choices, either becoming a ninja or a doctor, but you still had a choice. A lot of people would find that being oppressive, that you had only two choices, but a choice is a choice. That is what I believe. And that's still privilege. And I think not having a choice does not make anyone want to do it.
So, can I ask you a question? Which is the largest group in this country which has no choice? Which is the most oppressed? Which has the least?
Like if you're playing puzzle, if it's a puzzle, then probably the rich ones who want to maintain the status quo. Or in reality, I think the poor don't have the choice.
It's children. It's school students. Think about it.
So they can't make their own decision.
Yeah, you don't have a choice. You're forced to go to school. You're forced to do what your teacher says. You're forced to do your homework. You're forced to study for exam. Again, I think we treat them fairly cruelly just because they're kids and they happen to be dependent on us.
Exactly. I completely agree with that, because I was the kid who asked a lot of questions in my class, and that was looked at wasting time of the teacher, because I understand where they were coming from also. But that does not mean that you shun someone down. You might channelize it differently and tell them to come and talk to you later or something like that. You put an extra time of your own, but that does not mean you shut the kid down. Because that's just horrible. And that was it from my end. I won't, because I'm just trying to wrap this episode up. quickly because I'm already over my time with you and I don't want to take much of it. And this was probably it. And I'm really happy to have hosted you today. I think we spoke about a lot of impactful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. My only request is at some point, remember, you're not doing the podcast for me or for yourself. You're doing it for your users.
Exactly.
Step outside your own skin. Think about what users want. And the secret is to repackage and repurpose the podcast in multiple different formats so that users are more likely to listen or view it or whatever. And the good thing is with AI tools, you can do that as audio on Spotify. You can do it as video on YouTube, but no one has that attention span. You can break it up into short video segments, which you can share on Insta or Twitter or whatever else. Because I think that's the one thing which today your ability to be able to create good quality content is as good as any well-paid studios, because you actually have access to the same kind of tools. And that's what I think creators need to be able to take advantage of.
I truly agree with that. I think today is the best time to be starting a media company and something that could actually create a lot of impact. I think Scoop and BuzzFeed were in like pioneers of entertainment among media companies. Before that, there was Wall Street Journal and Business Insider and companies like that. Were billion-dollar companies just to bring that people's attention. So I truly think that a lot of media companies are going to come from India. And they're going to make a lot of difference, like with Mega Films and all, creating a global buzz around their movies and with VFX and storytelling of the kind that people like today. I think Dharma is already selling. So a lot of things are happening in the media spectrum. A lot of things are changing. And this is what I'm excited about personally. And I truly hope that I'm one of them someday, inshallah. And we make something big out of this brand, if nothing else. But thank you so much. I will stop the recording now. Is there anything that you would like to share with our audience?
No, I think this was fun. I think that's one advantage of hanging out with young people. I think what happens is you become older, you become more cynical and skeptical, and the world is going to the dogs. Or aajkal ke bache sab, and all that stuff. What we tend to forget is we're the ones who created the mess by doing nothing when we had the opportunity. So at least let's give the next generation a chance to fix our problems. We'll see.
That's very respectable. Thank you so much.